The city was winding down for the night. Streetlights flickered on, illuminating the quiet, empty streets in warm pools of amber. Isaiah Turner dragged his tired feet down the cracked sidewalk, his work boots scuffing the ground with each step. It had been a long shift at the warehouse. One of 2 jobs he worked to make ends meet. His shoulders ached, and every muscle in his body felt tight and worn out. But that was nothing compared to the ache in his heart. Home was a small, cramped apartment in a worn-down neighborhood where the scent of dust and concrete mixed with hints of cooking oil and exhaust. His mother's health had taken a turn for the worse recently. She'd been a proud, strong woman, raising him alone through hardship after hardship. Now, confined to a bed, she struggled even to breathe without help. Every cent Isaiah earned went toward her medical bills. And yet, it never seemed enough. Doctors talked about treatments, specialists, new medications that could ease her pain. But they might as well have been offering him a luxury yacht for all he could afford. Still, Isaiah did what he could. He worked. He prayed. And he loved her fiercely, holding on to hope with a grip as tight as iron. Isaiah was deep in thought, lost in the rhythm of his footsteps and the soft hum of the night when a sudden flicker of orange light caught his eye. A car had pulled over on the side of the road ahead. And there was smoke. At first, he assumed it was just an overheated engine. Cars in this part of town were always a little worse for wear. But as he got closer, the faint flicker turned into something more ominous, flames licking at the hood of the vehicle. Crawling along the metal like a living, breathing thing, he froze, a surge of adrenaline prickling through his body. Someone was in that car. Inside, through the cracked windshield, he could make out the faint silhouette of a woman slumped over the steering wheel. She wasn't moving. For a brief second, Isaiah's instincts screamed at him to keep walking, to call for help and stay away. But before he could even process the thought, his legs were already carrying him forward, faster and faster, until he was sprinting. "Hey," he shouted, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Hey, are you okay?" But there was no response. The flames were growing, dancing up from the hood to lick at the windshield. Isaiah's heart hammered in his chest as he reached the car, grabbing at the door handle. It was locked. Damn it, he cursed under his breath, pulling with all his strength. But the door wouldn't budge. Without a second thought, he took off his jacket, wrapped it around his fist, and smashed it against the window. Glass shattered, falling in shards onto the seat, and the smell of gasoline hit him like a punch to the gut. His hand stung, a trickle of blood forming on his knuckles. But he ignored it, his only focus on the woman inside. "Come on," he murmured, reaching through the broken window to unlock the door. As he did, he saw her face for the first time, pale, drawn, and streaked with a small cut on her cheek. Her breathing was shallow, her chest barely moving. "Stay with me," he whispered, pulling the door open and reaching for her. He grunted, using all his strength to lift her out of the car, her weight heavier than he expected. Flames were now climbing higher, devouring the front seats and sending waves of heat that seared his skin. With one last surge of effort, he pulled her free, stumbling backward just as a loud pop sounded from the car's engine. Isaiah shielded her with his body, throwing himself to the ground as the car burst into a roaring fireball behind them. The blast echoed down the street, rattling windows, and illuminating the night in a fierce, fiery glow. Isaiah lay there, his body shielding hers, breathing hard, the smell of smoke and burning metal filling his lungs. He could feel the woman's faint heartbeat against his arm, her shallow breaths barely perceptible. Relief flooded through him. A distant siren cut through the night, growing louder as emergency vehicles sped toward them. Paramedics rushed to his side, taking the woman from his arms, their voices a blur as they assessed her injuries. Isaiah sat back, exhausted, his hands trembling, his vision blurred as he took a deep breath, the adrenaline beginning to wear off, leaving only the dull throb of pain and exhaustion. "Sir, are you all right?" A paramedic was speaking to him, but Isaiah barely registered the words. He nodded absently, watching as they lifted the woman onto a stretcher, carefully checking her vitals. The flames continued to consume the car, sending a plume of smoke into the night sky. And that's when he noticed the murmurs. People were gathering, pointing, whispering, some with their phones out, recording the scene. It wasn't until the woman was loaded into the ambulance, the doors closing behind her, that he overheard one of the paramedics mention her name. "Rebecca Caldwell." they said, with a note of shock in their voice. She's the mayor. Isaiah blinked, the words not quite registering. He'd saved the mayor? Before he could process what that meant, his vision started to fade, his body finally succumbing to the fatigue and pain. His last thought as he drifted into unconsciousness was of his mother, waiting at home, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, this one selfless act would bring the change he so desperately needed. Isaiah woke to a hazy blur of fluorescent lights and the sterile smell of antiseptic. His head pounded, and for a moment, he struggled to remember where he was. The room was quiet, save for the steady beep of a heart monitor nearby. Blinking, he tried to push himself up, but his entire body ached. The events of the night flooded back, the flames, the woman, the explosion. A nurse appeared at his bedside, her face kind but tired. "You're awake," she said softly, checking his vitals. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been run over," he muttered, glancing around. "Where am I?" "The hospital," she replied with a gentle smile. "You've been out for a few hours. You're lucky. You know, that was a close call." She didn't ask any questions, perhaps out of respect or because she had already heard the story from the paramedics, but she gave him a nod that seemed to say, "Well done." He looked down at his hands, bandaged and sore. His knuckles were raw, with a few fresh cuts, and he could still feel the faint burn on his arms. The nurse adjusted his pillow and handed him a cup of water. "You should rest," she said. There was some smoke inhalation. "But you're going to be okay." Isaiah sipped the water, his mind turning back to the woman he had saved. She was the mayor, Rebecca Caldwell. He had seen her face in the news, heard her name in casual conversations around the city. The mayor of all people. He shook his head, a dry laugh escaping his lips. Only him, of all the people to save in this city. The nurse left, and Isaiah let his eyes wander, the night's events replaying in his mind. The room was quiet, but his thoughts were loud, racing with a strange mixture of disbelief, pride, and worry. What if he hadn't been there? What if he had walked right past? But he had been there, and he hadn't hesitated. And now, maybe for the first time in his life, he felt a sense of pride that settled in his chest. Just as he started to relax, the door opened, and a pair of people walked in, one a tall, clean-shaven man in a suit and the other a woman with a clipboard. Both wore expressions that were carefully composed, though the man's gaze was intense, as if he were analyzing Isaiah. "Mr. Turner?" the man asked, stepping closer. "Yes, that's me," Isaiah replied cautiously, sitting up straighter. He could tell these people were important, judging by their polished appearances and authoritative presence. "My name is Tom Fields." The man introduced himself, extending a hand that Isaiah shook tentatively. "I'm the chief of staff for Mayor Caldwell. This is Dr. Harper, one of the city's medical advisors. We're here to check on you, and to extend a personal thank you on behalf of the mayor." Isaiah's mind reeled. The mayor had sent her people to thank him? He didn't know what to say. "Mayor Caldwell is recovering as well," Tom continued, "and she insisted that we come and thank you for your bravery. Not everyone would have done what you did." Isaiah shifted uncomfortably, his eyes dropping to his hands. "Anyone would have done the same thing," he muttered, embarrassed by the attention. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He'd just been in the right place at the right time. Tom smiled, a faint crease appearing at the corners of his mouth. "I don't think that's true, Mr. Turner. I've known plenty of people who would have hesitated or even walked away. The mayor owes you her life." Isaiah felt a flush rise to his cheeks. He hadn't expected recognition, let alone gratitude. "I'm just glad she's okay," he said quietly, meeting Tom's gaze. "Dr. Harper, the woman with the clipboard, spoke up. The mayor was eager to know if you were all right. She's resting, but as soon as she's able, she'll likely want to see you personally." The idea of meeting her again seemed surreal. He hadn't saved her for thanks or a reward, yet the thought of speaking with her filled him with a strange mix of nerves and curiosity. He simply nodded, unsure how to respond. As Tom and Dr. Harper started to leave, Tom paused by the door, his gaze softening slightly. "You may not realize it, Mr. Turner, but you've made an impression on a lot of people. If there's anything you need, any way we can help, please let us know." Isaiah watched them go, his mind racing. The only thing he needed was a way to make a better life for himself and his mother. But how could he ask that? He was used to struggling alone, without help, without recognition. For the first time, However, he allowed himself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, things could change the next morning. Isaiah's discharge papers were prepared. He'd just finished signing the last form when he heard a knock on the door. Expecting it to be the nurse, he was surprised to see two familiar faces, a tall man with gray-streaked hair and a petite, elegant woman with a sling supporting her left arm. She looked different from the night before, her face pale and bandaged, but her eyes were as sharp and piercing as he remembered. "Mr. Turner?" she greeted, her voice softer than he expected. "I'm Rebecca Caldwell, the woman you saved." She extended her uninjured hand to him, and he took it, marveling at how surreal it felt to be standing face to face with the mayor of his city. "Ma'am," he replied, giving a respectful nod. "I'm glad to see you're all right." Rebecca smiled, a faint warmth in her eyes. "I owe you my life," she said, her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of emotion. "You didn't have to do what you did, and I can't thank you enough." Isaiah shifted, feeling the weight of her gratitude. "It was the right thing to do," he replied simply. "I just happened to be there." Rebecca's gaze held his, a spark of admiration flickering in her eyes. "You risked your own life to save a stranger. That's more than most people would do. Please, if there's anything you need, let me know. I want to repay you." "Isaiah, I mean it." Isaiah hesitated. Part of him wanted to brush off her offer, to maintain his pride, but another part, the part worn down by years of hardship, wondered if this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He thought of his mother lying alone in their small apartment, her face lined with pain and worry. He thought of the endless bills, the exhausting shifts, and the relentless struggle to survive. There is something," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "My mother, she's very sick. I've been trying to get her the care she needs." But, his voice trailed off, the words difficult to say. Rebecca's face softened, her hand reaching out to touch his arm. "Say no more, Isaiah. I'll see what I can do." Her tone was firm, and he could see the sincerity in her eyes. "I'll have my team look into the best care options for her. And if you're willing, I'd like to offer you a position with the city. You're clearly a man of courage and integrity. I think we could use someone like you." Isaiah's heart skipped a beat. A job with the city? It sounded too good to be true. But looking at Rebecca, he saw not only gratitude but a genuine desire to help him, a chance to make something of himself. To break free from the cycle of poverty and hardship that had bound him for so long. I don't know what to say," he stammered, emotions choking his words. Rebecca's smile widened, her hand giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "Say yes, Isaiah, say yes, and let me help you. The way you helped me." And in that moment, with his world teetering on the edge of change, Isaiah felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. Isaiah Turner sat on the edge of his mother's bed, watching her chest rise and fall with each labored breath. His hand rested on hers, thin and frail against his own calloused palm. Her face was lined with deep creases, not only from age but from years of hard work and worry, years of sacrifice so that Isaiah could have a chance at a better life. Yet here they were, trapped in the same cycle of struggle he had watched her endure. But something had changed. He had changed. The events of the past week had left a mark, and he could sense a glimmer of a future he had barely dared to dream of. When Rebecca Caldwell, the mayor, had promised him help, Isaiah hadn't known what to expect. Part of him had been wary, unable to believe that someone of her stature could truly understand the depth of his struggle. And yet, within days, her team had reached out, connecting him to a doctor who specialized in his mother's condition, offering support he could never have afforded on his own. A sense of wonder filled him, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel the unfamiliar stirrings of hope. That morning, as he gently released his mother's hand, a knock sounded on the door. Isaiah rose, feeling an anxious flutter in his stomach. He opened the door to find a young woman in a neatly pressed suit, a warm but professional smile on her face. "Mr. Turner?" she asked, extending a hand. "I'm Sophia Lawrence. I work in the mayor's office. I believe you were expecting me?" Isaiah shook her hand, nodding. "Yes, thank you for coming." Sophia glanced around the small apartment, taking in the worn furniture and peeling paint without a trace of judgment. "We're so grateful for what you did," she said softly. "The mayor wanted me to help you with the onboarding process if you're still interested in the position." Isaiah felt his chest tighten. "Yes, absolutely. he replied, trying to keep the eagerness from his voice. The job was a lifeline, a way to provide for his mother and finally escape the relentless grind. Sophia handed him a stack of paperwork, explaining each form with careful patience. As they worked, she outlined what his role would entail. Isaiah would be working as part of a community outreach team, an initiative led by the mayor herself to improve living conditions in the city's underprivileged neighborhoods. His job would involve connecting residents with resources, advocating for improvements, and acting as a bridge between the city and its citizens, a role that combined social work with civic responsibility. "I believe you'll be an excellent fit," Sophia said, smiling as she glanced up from the paperwork. "You understand these challenges personally. You've lived them." The mayor sees this as more than just a job. It's an opportunity to help lift up others in your community. Isaiah's heart swelled with gratitude and determination. It was as if a door had opened, allowing him to take his life in a new direction. One he hadn't dared to believe was possible. Isaiah's first day on the job arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He arrived at City Hall early, dressed in his best, his only dress shirt and trousers. Freshly ironed and starched, the building was a far cry from the places he was used to. It loomed above him, a towering structure of glass and steel, the city's pulse echoing within its walls. He took a deep breath, clutching his briefcase as he walked through the entrance. Inside, everything felt polished and efficient, the sounds of hurried footsteps and ringing phones filling the air. Isaiah could feel eyes on him, curious glances from people who likely knew his story. He did his best to ignore them, keeping his gaze steady as he approached the reception desk. Sophia met him soon after, her friendly smile easing some of his tension. "Good morning, Isaiah. I'll show you to your workspace," she said warmly. She led him through a series of hallways before stopping at a small office on the 4th floor. The desk was modest, and the chairs slightly worn, but to Isaiah, it looked like a throne. The thought of having his own space, his own responsibilities, felt surreal. Sophia went over his tasks for the day, explaining that he would be shadowing a senior team member who would guide him through the ropes. Isaiah's mentor for the day was a man named Greg Walters, a seasoned community outreach specialist with a warm demeanor and an easy laugh. Greg wasted no time, guiding Isaiah through the basics with a blend of patience and humor. Together, they visited local centers, meeting people, listening to concerns, and connecting them with available resources. Throughout the day, Isaiah witnessed the grit and determination of people who faced immense challenges yet continued to persevere. There were families struggling to make ends meet, elders neglected by the system, and children who lacked even the basic necessities. It was humbling and inspiring, reminding him of his own struggles and the strength his mother had shown in raising him. By the time he returned to his desk that evening, Isaiah felt both exhausted and invigorated. He knew that this work was more than a job, it was a calling. And for the first time in his life, he felt that he was part of something bigger than himself. Days turned into weeks, and Isaiah settled into his role, his confidence growing with each new responsibility. He became known for his empathy and dedication, earning the respect of his colleagues and the trust of the community. The mayor's initiative began to gain traction, with Isaiah as one of its rising stars. He worked tirelessly, often staying late to help a resident with paperwork or to brainstorm new outreach ideas. One evening, after a long day at work, Isaiah returned to his mother's apartment to find her sitting up in bed, her eyes bright with a spark he hadn't seen in years. "Isaiah," she whispered, her voice filled with pride. "I heard from Mrs. Lopez downstairs, they saw you on the news." She reached for his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "I always knew you were meant for more than this." As Isaiah's success grew, so did the mayor's gratitude. Rebecca Caldwell reached out to him frequently, requesting updates on his work and offering support. She occasionally invited him to sit in on meetings, eager to hear his perspective on issues affecting the community. Their bond, formed under extraordinary circumstances, deepened with each encounter. One day, during a particularly intense strategy session, Isaiah spoke up, suggesting a new program to provide vocational training for underprivileged youth. He explained that many young people in the community lacked direction and opportunities, leading them down paths that often resulted in hardship. Rebecca listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. "Isaiah, that's a powerful idea," she said, her tone sincere. "You've given me a lot to think about. Let's explore how we can make this happen." For the first time, Isaiah realized that his voice mattered, that he could influence change. His ideas soon took shape, becoming the Youth Empowerment Program, a city-sponsored initiative offering training and mentorship to help young people develop skills for a sustainable career. The program was an immediate success, transforming lives and reducing crime rates in the community. Isaiah became the face of the project, his story inspiring others to join the cause. His heart clenched, emotions swirling within him. This job had not only provided for his mother's medical care but had given her a renewed sense of hope. In her eyes, he saw the dreams she had kept alive for him, dreams he was finally fulfilling. Not everyone, however, welcomed Isaiah's success. Some residents from his old neighborhood saw his rise as a betrayal, accusing him of forgetting where he came from. Isaiah could feel the tension when he walked through the familiar streets, whispers, glares, old friends who now avoided his gaze. He hadn't changed, but the perception of him had, and it weighed heavily on his heart. One evening, as he left a local community event, a man he had known since childhood approached him. "So you're one of them now, huh?" the man sneered, his eyes narrowing. "Working for the city, looking down on the rest of us?" Isaiah paused, caught off guard by the bitterness in his old friend's tone. "It's not like that, man," he replied calmly. "I'm trying to make a difference. For all of us." His friend scoffed, shaking his head. "Yeah, sure, just remember where you came from." Isaiah. The encounter left him unsettled, a reminder of the fine line he walked between two worlds. He realized that change often brought conflict, not only from outside forces but from within. Yet, as much as it hurt, he knew he couldn't let it deter him. He was fighting for something bigger than himself, for the people who had supported him and for the city that had given him a second chance as months passed. Isaiah's life transformed beyond anything he had ever imagined. His mother's health improved with each day, her once fading strength returning. The Youth Empowerment Program continued to flourish, and Isaiah became a respected figure not only within his community but throughout the city. The media dubbed him the hero of Harlem, a title that, while flattering, felt surreal. The journey hadn't been easy. Isaiah had faced prejudice, self-doubt, and the harsh reality of balancing loyalty to his roots with his new responsibilities. Yet, through every challenge, he held on to the lesson his mother had taught him: never give up, no matter how hard life gets. And as he looked back on the path that had led him here, he knew he would do it all again. In one of their final meetings, Rebecca looked at Isaiah with a smile. "You know," she said, "when you pulled me out of that car, I thought you were saving my life. But in so many ways, you've saved this city." Isaiah chuckled, humbled. "I was just in the right place at the right time." She shook her head. "No, Isaiah, you were exactly where you were meant to be. And thanks to you, a lot of people have hope now." Isaiah felt a surge of pride and gratitude. It had taken every ounce of courage, every moment of doubt and hardship. But finally, he had found his purpose. And for the first time, he was ready to embrace it fully. Isaiah's new life at City Hall was surreal. Every morning, he would dress in his best clothes, take a deep breath, and step into the imposing building with a sense of wonder and quiet pride. Gone were the days of trudging home from late shifts, dragging his feet in exhaustion. Now, he moved with purpose, each day presenting new challenges and opportunities to make a difference. But with that purpose came unfamiliar responsibilities, strange encounters, and the constant feeling that he was straddling two worlds, one he had been born into, and one he was only beginning to understand. Rebecca Caldwell, the mayor, reached out to him regularly, showing a keen interest in his work. She insisted on hearing his thoughts on the challenges facing his community, valuing his insights in a way that left him almost speechless. Sitting in meetings with officials, Isaiah often felt the weight of imposter syndrome pressing down on him. He'd glance around the room, seeing well-dressed professionals speaking confidently in city jargon that he barely understood, and wonder, do I really belong here? One afternoon, Rebecca invited him into her office for a private meeting. The room was spacious, walls lined with books and city maps, the afternoon sunlight casting a warm glow through tall windows. She sat across from him, leaning forward with an expression that combined authority with genuine curiosity. "Isaiah, I want to know more about where you came from," she began, her voice gentle but insistent. I know that you understand the issues facing this city in a way most people here don't. Your perspective is unique, and I don't want you to ever feel like you need to hold back." Isaiah took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Mayor Caldwell, Rebecca," he corrected himself, feeling a bit more comfortable using her first name. "The neighborhood I come from, it's been left behind for a long time. There are people who have lost hope, who don't trust the system anymore. They don't think that anyone in power cares about what happens to them." Rebecca nodded, her face thoughtful. "I want to change that, Isaiah, but to do it, I need people like you to show me how. We need programs that empower these communities, not just band-aids." He hesitated before speaking, surprised at the openness he felt. "I have an idea," he began, "a program that focuses on job training and mentorship. Growing up, I saw so many people, so many kids, who just didn't have direction. They were talented, bright, but they never had a chance to believe in something more. If we could offer training, skills that can lead to real jobs, maybe we could give them the same hope you've given me." Rebecca's eyes lit up. "That's exactly the kind of program we need. Let's make this happen. Isaiah, I want you to lead this initiative." The gravity of her words settled over him, filling him with a mix of pride and fear. Lead an initiative? The idea was exhilarating, but it also terrified him. He wanted to make a difference, but he was painfully aware of the enormous responsibility he was accepting. Yet, looking into Rebecca's eyes, he knew he couldn't say no as the weeks passed. Isaiah dove headfirst into the work, pouring all his energy and focus into building the youth empowerment program. The project became his life. He spent hours meeting with local leaders, teachers, and community members, gathering insights and crafting a plan that could offer young people in his neighborhood a new path. He organized workshops, recruited mentors, and secured partnerships with local businesses willing to offer internships and job placements. It was a monumental task, but each success, every partnership secured, every student who signed up, felt like a small victory. One evening, as he returned to his apartment, Isaiah found his mother waiting for him. Her eyes were brighter than they had been in years, a small smile playing on her lips as she watched him enter. She was sitting up in bed, a position she hadn't been able to manage without support in weeks. Her health had begun to improve under the care Rebecca's team had arranged. And Isaiah marveled at the change in her. "I heard about what you're doing," she said softly, pride shining in her eyes. "Mrs. Perkins from down the hall told me she saw you on the news. The Youth Empowerment Program, she called it, said my boy's some kind of hero around here." Isaiah felt a warmth spread through him, his heart swelling with emotion. "I'm just trying to help, Mama," he replied, taking her hand, "trying to make a difference. Just like you taught me." She squeezed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You always had that fire, Isaiah, just like your father. He'd be proud of you." Those words settled in his heart, grounding him with a sense of purpose. He thought of his father, a man he barely remembered but who had left a legacy of strength and resilience. Isaiah had always known that his mother had worked tirelessly to keep that legacy alive. Even as they struggled, now, he was carrying it forward. But with the recognition came challenges Isaiah hadn't anticipated. As the youth empowerment program gained momentum, he began to notice shifts in how people treated him. Friends from his old neighborhood started to look at him differently. Some with admiration, others with suspicion. Rumors swirled that Isaiah had sold out by working for the mayor, that he had turned his back on his roots. One night, as he walked down a familiar street, a group of men he used to know approached him. Their leader, Marcus, had once been a close friend, someone he'd grown up with. But time and hardship had taken their toll, and Marcus's expression was hardened, his eyes carrying a sharp edge. "So, you're a big man now, huh?" Marcus sneered, crossing his arms. "Working for the city, helping out the folks who left us behind." Isaiah took a steadying breath. "Marcus, you know me. This program isn't about choosing sides. I'm trying to bring real change to the neighborhood." Marcus shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping him. "Yeah? And what's in it for you, Isaiah? You think just because you got a desk job you're better than us now?" The words stung, but Isaiah held his ground. "No, man, that's not it. I'm doing this because we deserve better. All of us. I'm trying to give these kids the chances we never had." Marcus's gaze softened for a moment, but the bitterness lingered. "Good luck with that," he muttered, turning away. "Just remember, don't forget where you came from." Isaiah watched him walk away, the weight of the encounter settling heavily on his shoulders. He had always thought that making a difference would be straightforward. But he was beginning to realize that change came with sacrifices. He had to be willing to face criticism, even from people he cared about. And despite the pain, he understood that his work was for a purpose greater than any one person's opinion. Months passed, and the youth empowerment program became a beacon of hope in the city. Isaiah became a public figure, recognized by people on the street. His story shared in newspapers and on TV. The program helped young people find jobs, learn trades, and envision futures they had never believed possible. Every success story, every life transformed, reminded Isaiah of the power of community and compassion. His mother's health continued to improve, her pride in him evident in every smile and hug. Rebecca Caldwell remained a constant support, encouraging Isaiah and giving him the platform to expand his vision. One afternoon, she called him into her office, her expression both proud and contemplative. "Isaiah, do you realize what you've done?" she asked, her voice filled with admiration. "The city is changing because of you. People are talking, looking at our community in a new light. You've done something most people only dream of." Isaiah felt a wave of humility wash over him. "I just wanted to help, to repay the kindness you showed me." Rebecca shook her head. "It's more than that. You've shown people what's possible. You've made them believe in change." He looked down, a faint smile on his lips. "I never imagined this life. It feels like a dream." Rebecca's gaze softened. "You've earned every bit of it, Isaiah, and I have no doubt that your impact will continue long after today. But remember, the work never ends. There will always be challenges. People who doubt, people who resist change. You have to stay true to yourself and your vision." Her words lingered with him, a reminder of the journey that lay ahead. Isaiah had found his calling, a purpose that gave meaning to every hardship he had endured. He knew there would be more obstacles, more moments of doubt and struggle. But he was ready, anchored by the lessons of his past and the dreams he held for the future. As he walked out of City Hall that day, the city stretched out before him, a living tapestry of lives, stories, and possibilities. And for the first time, Isaiah truly felt at home, not only in his community but in his own skin. A man with a purpose and a mission. Isaiah Turner had risen from the ashes, not only as a hero but as a symbol of resilience and hope. And he knew, with unshakable certainty, that his journey was just beginning. Isaiah Turner stood before a room full of young people, their eyes fixed on him with a mixture of awe, hope, and uncertainty. The youth empowerment program had become more than he'd ever dreamed it could be, reaching beyond his neighborhood, touching lives in corners of the city he had never set foot in. As he looked out over the room, he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility, knowing that these young people, full of potential, yet vulnerable to the harsh realities of life, were counting on him. "Every one of you," he began, his voice steady but filled with conviction, "has the power to change your story. I know what it feels like to think that there's no way out. I know what it's like to feel trapped. But trust me, each one of you has something to give this world. And together, we can find a way to make that happen." The room was silent, the weight of his words settling over them. He saw a girl in the back row, barely 16, her eyes brimming with tears. He recognized something in her, the same desperation and drive he had once felt. As she looked at him, he gave her a slight nod, a silent promise that he would help her find her way. The session ended, and as the young people filtered out of the room, the girl approached him, her voice small and hesitant. "Mr. Turner," she whispered, "do you really believe someone like me can make it?" Isaiah knelt so that they were at eye level, a gentle, reassuring smile on his face. "I don't just believe it, I know it. You're stronger than you think. And you've got people here who believe in you. Don't give up, all right?" She nodded, a flicker of hope lighting up her face as she walked away. Isaiah watched her go, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose and fulfillment he could barely describe. He had once been in her shoes, uncertain, questioning his worth, searching for a path out of hardship. Now, he was able to guide others, to be the mentor he'd once needed. Back at his office in City Hall, Isaiah was going through paperwork when a familiar knock sounded on his door. He looked up to see Rebecca standing there, her face warm with a proud smile. The mayor had become not only a mentor but a friend, someone who understood his journey in a way that few others did. "Mind if I come in?" she asked. stepping inside without waiting for a reply. Not at all, Isaiah said, rising to greet her. You're always welcome here. She sat down across from him, folding her hands on the desk. I just heard about the numbers for the youth empowerment program. She began, her voice filled with admiration. It's been a tremendous success. Isaiah, the dropout rates have gone down. Employment has gone up, and crime is lower than it's been in years. You're making a difference in ways even I couldn't have predicted. Isaiah felt a flush of pride, but he shook his head modestly. It's not just me, Rebecca. It's the people, the mentors, the community itself. They're the ones making this happen. She gave him a knowing smile. True, but they needed someone to lead the way. And I'm grateful that someone was you. Isaiah could feel the weight of her words, the sincerity behind them. Rebecca's belief in him had been a lifeline, something he had clung to when doubt crept in. But now, as he sat across from her, he realized he was no longer the man who had stumbled into City Hall that first day. Unsure of his place, he had grown into his role. And more importantly, he had come to believe in himself. Rebecca, he began, his tone more serious. I want to take this program further. I think we can replicate it across the city, maybe even beyond that. There are communities everywhere facing the same challenges. They need the same opportunities we're offering here. Rebecca's eyes sparkled with excitement. Isaiah, that's a wonderful idea. Expanding the program could change lives on an even larger scale. It'll be a huge undertaking. But if anyone can make it happen, it's you. The sense of possibility filled him with renewed energy. Together, they began mapping out ideas, discussing funding, partnerships, and ways to bring his vision to life on a grander scale. The meeting stretched late into the evening, and as they finished, Isaiah felt a deep sense of purpose. Knowing he was embarking on a journey that could alter the course of countless lives, the expansion of the youth empowerment program came with its own set of challenges. As Isaiah worked tirelessly, the demands on his time increased, and so did the scrutiny. He was invited to speak at conferences, meet with policymakers, and share his story in the media. His face became known, his story told as an example of resilience and success. Yet, with fame came criticism. Some questioned his intentions, accusing him of using his background as a sob story to gain sympathy. Others dismissed the program as a publicity stunt by the mayor's office. The words cut deep, filling Isaiah with a familiar sense of doubt. Was he doing enough? Was his work truly making a difference? Or was it just another city project that would eventually fade away? One evening, after a particularly intense day, Isaiah returned to his apartment. Drained, his mother, who was now able to walk with some assistance, greeted him at the door. She studied his face with concern, seeing the exhaustion etched into his features. You're carrying a heavy burden, my boy, she said, guiding him to sit beside her. Tell me what's weighing on your heart. Isaiah sighed, running a hand over his face. Mama, sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it. People are saying things, doubting the program, doubting me. I keep telling myself it doesn't matter. But, it hurts. She took his hand, her gaze steady and wise. Isaiah, people will always find something to criticize. They'll always try to tear down what they don't understand. But don't let their words make you doubt what's in your heart. Remember why you started this. Remember the people who depend on you. Her words settled over him, a soothing balm to his troubled mind. She was right. His work wasn't for the critics or the doubters. It was for the young girl who had found hope. The families who now had a future to believe in. The people he was fighting for were the ones who mattered as time went on. Isaiah's resolve only strengthened. The expansion of the youth empowerment program moved forward, reaching neighborhoods that had long been overlooked, providing opportunities for those who needed them most. Isaiah visited each new site personally, speaking with the youth, listening to their dreams and fears, reminding them that they were not alone. At one of these events, he noticed a young boy standing alone, watching him with wide, admiring eyes. The boy's clothes were worn, his sneakers scuffed, and Isaiah saw in him a reflection of his younger self, a kid full of potential, waiting for someone to believe in him. Hey there, Isaiah greeted, kneeling down to the boy's level. What's your name? James, the boy replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Well, James, Isaiah said, offering him a warm smile. Do you know why we're here? James shrugged, shuffling his feet. They said it's a program to help us find jobs, so we don't get into trouble. Isaiah nodded. That's right, but it's more than that. James, we're here because we believe in you. I know what it's like to feel like the world doesn't care. To think you don't have a way out. But I want you to know that you do. We're here to help you find it. The boy looked up at him, a flicker of hope brightening his face. You really mean that? Isaiah placed a hand on his shoulder. With all my heart, and I promise, if you're willing to work hard, there's nothing you can't achieve. The boy nodded, his gaze determined. As Isaiah stood, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his work was creating ripples that would one day become waves of change years later. Isaiah sat in his office, now overseeing a citywide network of empowerment programs that had transformed countless lives. His desk was cluttered with papers and reports, each one a testament to the progress they had made. The city had changed, and so had he. He was no longer the young man who had stumbled into City Hall. Desperate and uncertain, he was a leader, a symbol of resilience and possibility. Rebecca entered his office, her face lined with age but her spirit as vibrant as ever. She looked around, a smile of pride and nostalgia on her face. You did it, Isaiah, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You didn't just save my life that night, you saved this city. And I am so proud of you. Isaiah felt his throat tighten, gratitude filling his chest. I couldn't have done any of it without you. Rebecca, you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. That's what we're here for, Isaiah, to lift each other up, to find strength in our shared journey. Never forget that. He nodded, her words resonating deep within him. Their paths had crossed under extraordinary circumstances. And together, they had created something beautiful, something that would endure long after they were gone. As he looked out over the city from his office window, Isaiah felt a profound sense of peace. He had come full circle, transforming not only his own life but the lives of those around him. His journey had been one of hardship, resilience, and redemption, and he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. For he was no longer just a man of the community, he was its guardian, its guide, and its hope. Isaiah continued to stand at the window, his gaze sweeping over the sprawling city below him. The skyline, which once felt distant and foreign, was now intimately familiar. He had walked these streets, felt their pulse, heard the dreams and struggles of those who lived within each block. The buildings, the people, they were all part of his story now, woven together in a way that felt as natural as breathing. Rebecca's voice broke his quiet reverie. Isaiah, she began, a subtle warmth in her tone. There's something I wanted to discuss with you. The city council is proposing an initiative, a project to invest in long-term community development across multiple districts. It's ambitious, but I think it could be a chance to take your work even further. To reach more people. Isaiah turned to face her, the weight of her words settling over him. What would that look like? He asked, his mind already racing with possibilities. Rebecca smiled, a glint of excitement in her eyes. It would mean taking everything you've built here, the youth empowerment program, the mentorships, the job training, and scaling it up, not just within our city, but potentially statewide, even nationally. But it's a big commitment, and it would need someone with experience and, more importantly, someone with heart. He took a deep breath, processing the magnitude of what she was saying. The thought of expanding his program to that level was thrilling but also terrifying. The stakes would be higher, the scrutiny even more intense. Yet, at that moment, a memory surfaced. The faces of the young people who had come through his program. Their lives changed, their futures brighter. He remembered the countless voices he had heard. Voices filled with doubt, fear, but also a glimmer of hope. I'm in, he said finally, his voice resolute. If it means reaching more people, giving them a chance to believe in themselves, then I'm in. Rebecca's face broke into a wide smile. I knew you'd say that. And I want you to know, Isaiah, I'll be here to support you every step of the way, with the council's support. The new initiative took off. They named it the Community Resilience Project, a network of programs focused on education, job training, housing, and mental health support, aiming to break the cycles of poverty and hardship that had long gripped struggling communities. Isaiah was appointed as the director, his team growing to include specialists, social workers, and passionate individuals who shared his vision. The work was grueling. Every day brought new challenges, from funding hurdles to logistical nightmares. But Isaiah faced each obstacle with unwavering determination. He traveled across cities and states, meeting with leaders, visiting schools, speaking to communities, and sharing his story. He wanted people to understand that change wasn't a distant dream but something tangible, achievable, and within their grasp. One evening, as he prepared for a speech at a major fundraising event, Isaiah received a message from Marcus, his old friend from the neighborhood. They hadn't spoken since that difficult encounter months ago, and seeing Marcus's name filled Isaiah with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. He opened the message, reading Marcus's words carefully. "Isaiah, I just wanted to say, I was wrong about you. I see what you're doing, and I get it now. You're doing something real, something that's changing lives, and I'm proud of you. Man, I'd like to see you sometime if you're open to it." Isaiah felt a surge of emotion, relief mingling with gratitude. He'd never held any resentment toward Marcus. He understood the doubts and frustrations his friend had harbored. But now, knowing that Marcus saw the value in his work, Isaiah felt a sense of healing, as if an old wound had finally closed. Later that week, they met at a small diner in their old neighborhood. Isaiah arrived early, his mind swimming with memories of his past, of the long conversations he and Marcus used to have about escaping the hardships of their youth. When Marcus walked in, they exchanged a silent nod, both men acknowledging the distance they had traveled to arrive at this moment. They talked for hours, sharing stories, memories, and hard-earned wisdom. Marcus revealed his own struggles, the ways he had tried and failed to make something of himself, and the anger he had felt toward a system that seemed stacked against him. Isaiah listened with understanding, never interrupting, letting Marcus unburden himself. Finally, Marcus looked at him, a quiet respect in his eyes. "You really did it, Isaiah. You broke out, but not just for yourself, for all of us." Isaiah shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. I had people who believed in me, who gave me a chance when I didn't think I deserved one. That's all I'm trying to do now, pay it forward." Marcus nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. "If you ever need an extra hand with the program, you know where to find me." Isaiah's face lit up, the offer touching him deeply. "I'd be honored, Marcus." In that moment, Isaiah realized that his work had come full circle. Not only had he found his calling, but he had also helped bring his community along with him, inspiring those who had once doubted to believe in the power of change. Months turned into years, and the Community Resilience Project continued to grow, expanding to cities across the country. Isaiah's story became well-known, a symbol of hope and resilience that inspired others to take action, to believe that real change was possible. He was invited to speak at universities, community centers, and even government panels, sharing his vision for a future where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. Rebecca eventually retired, her legacy entwined with Isaiah's own journey. At her farewell ceremony, Isaiah spoke in her honor, his voice filled with gratitude and admiration. "Rebecca Caldwell taught me that real leadership isn't about power, it's about service. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And because of her, countless lives have been changed. She didn't just save me that night, she saved every young person who now believes they have a future worth fighting for." The audience applauded, their faces moved, and Rebecca gave him a tearful smile from across the room, her pride evident as Isaiah's influence grew. He faced new battles, policy changes, political resistance, and the ever-present struggle for funding. But he never wavered. Each time he encountered a setback, he thought of his mother's words, her unyielding belief that he was meant to make a difference. And he pressed on, fortified by the memories of the people who had believed in him when he was still uncertain of his own worth. One day, as he visited a newly opened community center in a city that had adopted the Resilience Project, he was approached by a young woman. She looked to be in her early 20s, her eyes bright with excitement and a hint of nervousness. "Mr. Turner," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I just wanted to say thank you. I grew up in a neighborhood like yours, and your program gave me a chance. Because of you, I'm going to college now. I'm the first in my family. And I just wanted you to know that it's because of you." Isaiah's heart swelled, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for telling me that," he replied, his hand resting on her shoulder. "I'm so proud of you. You're proof that change is real, that it's possible." As he watched her walk away, he realized that she was the embodiment of everything he had fought for, an ordinary person, full of potential, empowered to believe in herself. She was his legacy, the living testament to the resilience he had nurtured. The hope he had planted. Isaiah continued his work, watching as new generations took up the torch, leading their communities with the same passion and drive he had once brought to City Hall. He knew his journey was far from over, that there would always be more work to do, more lives to touch, but he also knew that he had built something that would endure, something that would outlast him and continue to grow. Years later, as he stood on a stage at a ceremony honoring his contributions, Isaiah looked out over the audience, friends, family, colleagues, and strangers whose lives he had impacted. His mother, now older but still full of pride, sat in the front row, her eyes shining with joy. Isaiah took a deep breath, his voice strong and steady as he addressed the crowd. We are all part of something greater than ourselves. Each of us has the power to create change, to lift others up, to make this world a little brighter. My journey began with a simple act of courage, but it was the belief and support of others that carried me here. And now, it's up to each of us to carry that forward. The crowd erupted into applause, their faces filled with admiration and inspiration. As Isaiah looked over them, he felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. He had come a long way from the young man who had once stumbled upon destiny on a burning road. He had found his purpose, his path, and he had left a legacy that would continue to inspire generations. In his heart, Isaiah knew that his work would never truly be finished, but he was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that he had not only transformed his own life but had become a beacon of hope for countless others, a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit.